what's up, bro? Yo, babies. Okay, let me make sure I'm recording. You know what I mean? Make sure I'm recording. Hey, what's up, bro? Yo, babies? Boss King, baby, back here with another video. Y'all see today, we got the most unexpected returns in MMA history. History. You know what I mean? But anyways, hey, let's just get into the video before we get into it. Stop playing, get into the video. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you... Oh, hold on. I almost said before your mama slap you. Hit the subscribe button like your mama hit you. It's weird. Let me stop playing. Before we get into the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Join the Royal Babies, because I am royal. You are royal. And we're not here to take part. We're here to take over. So yeah, make sure you join the Royal Babies. And share the video and everything else. And yeah, let's just get into the video. I started this video weird, so... Yeah.
Everyone has that fight or fighter that got them into the sport, and it only takes one particular moment of triumph or perseverance for us to feel bonded to that athlete for the rest of their career. Sadly, the sport of mixed martial arts is often a cruel one. No fighter remains in their peak forever, and eventually all gloves are left in the octagon. However, several times in MMA history we wrote off competitors as being gone for good, but like all those people who poofed away in the Avengers, I don't know what was going on there, the spirit for combat rarely fades away entirely, and some heroes are never gone for good. So let's take a look back at those fighters who, despite what we thought, made a return to the sport. And before the video, just a quick reminder to like and subscribe. We recently noticed only a few of you are getting notifications, so make sure to click the bell and turn those on. I'm Balian from MMA On Point, and here are 10 returns you never thought you'd see. Number 10, Oleg Taktarov. One of the pioneers of the early UFC and, in all honesty, one of the first true mixed martial artists we saw compete, Oleg Taktarov quickly became a fan favourite for his well-rounded style, calm approach to combat, and of course, after winning UFC 6 in 1995, was technically the first Russian champion. Sorry, Habib.
Send a message, like location.
Of course, location.
Win a belt.
Hey, I fucking love Khabib.
But he certainly was the best the country had to offer, and in his first 10 fights lost only once to the big man himself, Dan Severn. In 2001, he'd amassed a 15-5 record, promotion hopping across the globe from Pride, Pancrase, Valle Tudo, and the WFF. Essentially a 10-year veteran at this point, and one from the earliest days of the sport at that. We thought we'd seen the last of the original Russian Bear as he transitioned his ultimate fighting into acting, appearing in Air Force One, Bad Boys 2, National Treasure, and We Own the Night. Oh, he also boxed Dolph Lundgren, and he surprised us all, adding his historic name to the bill at the legendary Bodog USA vs Russia in 2007, 6 years after his retirement. I mean, how could the first Russian champion refuse such an event? And after getting dropped earlier and weathering the storm in a grueling back and forth, won in spectacular fashion via rolling knee bar. He would then make another return 1 year later to fight the monster Mark Kerr in the now defunct yet still legendary Yama Pit fighting, where he would win again in less than 2 minutes via his knee bar. Legacy maintained. Vash Zdarovia. Number 9, Uriah Faber. At this point, due to
I doubt I'll know any of these
lists Mr. California appears in, I'm going to assume you know enough about his career. UFC Hall of Famer, WEC champion, collegiate wrestler, and perennial top contender of the bantamweight division. And you'll probably also know that following a 13-year career in 2016, Faber finally hung up his gloves following his victory over Brad Pickett in his hometown of Sacramento nonetheless. Pretty much a perfect exit if you ask me. Apparently Faber knew something we all didn't, however. He wasn't actually retired, just taking a bit of a break.
I'm not leaving.
Sure, his days as an active competitor in the division were over, but he was still a big name, and during the period was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. And come Faber's 40th birthday, he thought he'd treat himself, and us, let's face it, to one more contest in the UFC Octagon. After 3 years away in what we were sure was the last time we'd seen the Californian Kid, he returned in emphatic fashion against Ricky Simone and stopped him in just 46 seconds. Excellent, a nice cherry on top of an already cream-filled cake of a career. He proved that not even Father Time could stop him from recreating his past glory, so it was time for Faber to exit the sport. Except he did take one more fight with future champion Peter Yan, and it didn't go well. Swings and roundabouts, innit? Number 8, Sakuraba. It is said if you return to the fabled Saitama Super Arena and listen to the echoes around its empty stands, you can still hear the chants of Saku reverberate around its walls as the Japanese legend makes another walk into the Pride Ring. Sakuraba's first pro win would actually come at UFC Japan, where he won the heavyweight tournament in 1997 and would then spend the next 3 years staying undefeated, more or less, in the Pride promotion, also cementing his place as a pioneer and legend of the sport with his wildly entertaining submission attacks and undeniable heart and will. His career would run 15 years to 2011, 2011, where at Dream 17, while wearing more bandages than Imhotep after 4 losses in a row and age finally catching up with him, even commentator Frank Trigg proclaimed, "I hate to say it about a true legend of the sport, but he really needs to stop fighting." And he did, or at least we thought he did, as he would spend the next 4 years out of
that's what y'all
competition. That was until new Japanese promotion Rizin had their inaugural show in 2015, and who did they want to headline such a prestigious event? 3 guesses. Sakuraba was booked once more in a return contest against fellow submission legend Shinya Aoki. The MMA world was both shocked and in jubilation to see one of their favorite legends compete again. Unfortunately for Sako, things didn't go his way, as was expected to be honest, but for Sakuraba it didn't matter. He always cared for one thing, his fans, and he got to give them a show one more time. Number 7, Bas Rutin. Sadly for most of us, the Rutin era was before our time. And yes, before you call me a casual, I was literally 2 years old when he made his debut. But that didn't stop many of us from hearing about this legendary Dutch kickboxer back when he was truly a menacing figure, Jack stacked and beating more livers in the 90s than Jack Daniels. From 1993 to 1998, Bas dominated the Pancrase promotion, capturing the title, defending it, and ending on an 18-fight win streak. After leaving, he had 2 fights in the UFC, but injuries had begun to catch up with El Guapo, and after capturing the heavyweight title against Kevin Randleman, he vacated the belt and himself from the sport. And although we were sure we'd see Bas around commentating pro wrestling and generally being his goofy self, no one expected to see him in the cage again. But we were wrong. In 2006, 7 years removed from MMA competition and his UFC title, to the surprise of many, he announced his return to MMA and was once more booked to fight none other than everyone's favorite holy warrior, Chemo. But 2 days before the event, he tested positive
what
for
the hell? That man, you know, Jesus and
everyone's favorite holy warrior, Chemo. But 2 days before the event, he tested positive for steroids and was replaced by Warpath Ruben Villarreal. Bas wasted no time.
I feel like everyone is using steroids, bro. In the professional sport, okay, here, as Muhammad, no, not Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson said, you shouldn't be using steroids in this type of shit. Like in this type of setting, in a place where you can actually kill someone with punches and shit like that, because you can kill people with punches without even using steroids. So if you use it, you put the other fighter at risk more. So it's very unethical to use steroids in fighting. But like in running and shit like that, trust me, everyone's juiced all the way up.
Ruben Villarreal. Bas wasted no time landing accurate and crisp punches before blasting him with those proper Dutch leg kicks, and it took only 5 before Villarreal collapsed to the canvas and El Guapo turned back the clock 7 years later. Number 6, Josh Barnett. The rise of Josh Barnett in the founding years of MMA was truly something to behold. Here was this 20-year-old supersized catch wrestling submission machine with a vicious tenacity and a toolkit deeper than a bag of holding. His UFC debut in the year 2000 saw him go 10-0 at just 23 years old, with an entire career and growing sport in front of him to conquer. He captured UFC gold shortly after, but was stripped after failing a drug test and would spend the next 10 years competing anywhere but the UFC, winning the Pancrase Openweight title, making it to the final of both the Pride and Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix. Since his UFC dismissal, his relationship with Dana White had been rocky at best. In fact, in 2010, Dana stated, "Josh Barnett isn't and never will be in the UFC. This isn't the kind of guy that I respect or want to do business with," citing his attitude and multiple drug test failures as the primary reason. But lo and behold, following the acquisition of Strikeforce, it was shortly announced that none other than the War Master himself would be making his UFC return. Older fans were shocked to see Dana finally relent on his promise from 3 years ago. I guess the heavyweight division really was that desperate. And the youngest ever UFC champion made a return across the next 3 years, eventually going 3-2. Number 5, Chuck Liddell. Waging war has its price, and when you've been competing in knockout contests for the best part of 10 years like the Iceman had, it's not surprising that no matter how much you prepare for battle, like Maximus in Tigris, Father Time takes his toll. Chuck was the cult star of the early 2000s, and we saw him amass 8 finishes and 13 victories, losing only to Randy Couture and Jeremy Horn inside the octagon, both of which he avenged. But starting with his knockout loss to Rampage Jackson in 2007, things started to slide for Chuck as he would win only 1 of his next 5 contests, 3 of which ended with him unconscious. After his TKO loss to Shogun at UFC 97, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame for everything he had achieved so far in his career, perhaps hoping this would give him reason to comfortably lay down the gloves, with Dana himself stating, "I don't want him to fight." But Chuck was matched with Tito for 1 more season of The Ultimate Fighter and a final and third rematch in their trilogy. Tito got injured, however, and Liddell fought instead Rich Franklin, and unfortunately for Chuck, was KO'd again late in the first round. So following his 3rd KO loss, he retired and was given the position of Vice President of Business Development by the UFC. However, once WME purchased the company, he was relieved of his position, leaving him once again jobless, and shortly after, he announced his return to MMA to finally emerge in the trilogy match with rival Tito Ortiz. Ortiz had still been competing up to this point. Chuck was now 8 years removed from his loss to Franklin and looked like a scarily vacant version of himself. And that's exactly what we got come fight night, as Ortiz walked through the Iceman, KOing him in the first round in one of those moments where you already knew what was kinda gonna happen, but you couldn't help but watch anyway. Number 4, Hoist Gracie. Believe it or not, it actually took 7 years before Hoist Gracie was handed his first defeat in MMA competition, and I'd say given the unpredictability, unregulated weight classes, and unbridled chaos that often ensued in the early days of MMA, that's damn impressive. Granted, Hoist had just 11 fights in 2 years before taking a 5-year hiatus from the sport, but in that time he won UFC 1, 2, and 4 before setting down his gi and returning for the Pride Open Grand Prix in 2000, a tournament that contained monsters like Mark Kerr, Gary Goodridge, Enton Inoue, Mark Coleman, and of course Sakuraba, who handed him his first defeat after they battled for 90 minutes in the Pride ring. He would then compete in some of the more heavily modified rule set competitions in Pride, as well as K1 of all places, and even make a return to the UFC to get smashed by welterweight kingpin Matt Hughes. After attending a UFC press conference in Brazil in 2010, Hoist announced his desire to return to the octagon, and he was even added back to the website roster in 2011, but after struggling to find the right opponent and on the 20th anniversary of the UFC in 2013, he announced to Ariel Helwani his retirement from the sport. So a long and legendary career was at an end, but the fighting spirit of the Gracies clearly could not be contained. Either that or he needed the cash, but either way, the new freak show fight capital of the world, Bellator, came a-calling in 2016, offering him a veteran's bout against a 52-year-old Frank Shamrock, Hoist himself being 49. In a return no one expected to see. 9 years removed from his last contest, he accepted the fight and in a scrappy, surely testosterone dick-pilled fueled contest, stopped the former most dangerous man on the planet in just under 3 minutes. Number 3, Misha Tate. If you took a look at women's MMA in 2011 and the roster of athletes that encompassed it, you'd probably point to only one name as the future of the sport. And no, it wouldn't be Ronda Rousey necessarily. Granted, she was already 4-0 and angling towards Misha and her title, but Tate had just secured the Bantamweight Strikeforce belt, was 12-2 and on a 6-fight win streak. Gina Carano had long since retired, and Cyborg, well, although she just captured the featherweight championship, she also just popped for steroids. Tate was charismatic, attractive, and a damn good athlete. She certainly could have carried the women's divisions in the UFC and probably done a damn fine job as its face.
Damn, bro, like, nah, she goes.
So next fight would be against Ronda Rousey, and history would tell the rest of the story.
Focus.
She did of course find her own UFC title after defeating Holly Holm, but retired in 2016 after a near 10-year-long career. But little did we know she was not done yet. In 2021, 4 years after her loss to Raquel Pennington, Tate announced a return to the sport, stating her belief she doesn't think the sport has passed her by and wanting to make up for the dark place she found herself in the latter part of her career. She looked truly dominant, being the first fighter to stop Marion Renault in her 11-year career. Granted, she wasn't exactly top of the division, and we'll have to see how Tate performs moving forward, but nonetheless, we all thought we'd seen the last of the cupcake. Number 2, Brock Lesnar. After several years of WWE wrestling and NFL football, the larger-than-life, quite literally jacked-up white boy decided it was time to see if his ability to toss around humans and deliver blood-curdling speeches would translate into the world of mixed martial arts. Beginning his journey with a 1-minute annihilation of Min Soo Kim in K1 Heroes Special Dynamite USA event, he moved straight into the UFC octagon, a fight where he'd almost pummeled Mir into unconsciousness before the BJJ black belt strapped on a knee bar. Still impressive for a debut, and just 2 fights later he'd won the heavyweight title, defeating Randy Couture at UFC 91. He defended it twice and held on to the record for most heavyweight title defenses right up until it was broken in 2018 by Stipe with his wins over Ngannou. Then after a battle with diverticulitis and 2 consecutive losses inside the cage, he announced, "Tonight is the last time you'll see me in the octagon." And so Lesnar went back to the WWE, wrestling his life away, making far more money for far less punishment. Speculation around his return lasted for another...
hey, who's not going to take that? Who's not? I mean, you're still doing what you love, kinda. You still going in to fight, you know what I mean? Even though it's like acting fighting, you know what I mean? But hey, bag, bro, the bag.
5 years until...
And you're doing what you love, and you have to retire because you're getting humiliated.
Wrestling his life away, making far more money for far less punishment. Speculation around his return lasted for another 5 years until in 2015 he signed another contract with WWE, putting rumors of his return to bed for good. That was until Ariel Helwani had gotten wind of a special one-off return ahead of UFC 200, where Brock was scheduled to make one more appearance inside the cage 5 years after his last defeat. His opponent, Samoan slugger Mark Hunt, who many fans were happy to see receive a large payday, and Lesnar emerged the victor after a hard-fought 3-round battle. The Beast had returned to many fans' surprise, and considering the evolution of the sport in his time away, he was still willing to step up and accept the challenge. Of course, it turns out he had more steroids in his system than white blood cells, but Brock fans were blown away. Number 1.
One thing oh, Nick Diaz, let's go. One thing I look at when we
So
talk about steroid people, like this is crazy because
was still
if you try and get the what you call the aesthetic, whatever the fuck that body type
willing
is, which I kind of had at some point before I stopped gymming,
to step
where you look like a V, basically V taper body. Your shoulders have to be big. That's one thing that
up
we
and
look
accept
at.
the challenge of
If your shoulders are just like fucking massive, then you might be on steroids. That's one thing. And your nipples, they but for okay, let me not say for me, because you know what I mean, I didn't take no shit. But hey, that's what we look at. If your shoulders are just like too big, it's like,
of course it turns
but hey, okay, you it's kind of obvious with him. He has to be.
out he had more steroids in his system than one.
It's like being surprised that The Rock is taking steroids. You'd be dumb, you know what I mean?
Like blood cells, but Brock fans were blown away. Number 1, Nick Diaz.
Let's go.
Given half a chance, I'm still happy to remind fans newest
He unfortunately lost the fight.
the Nevada State Athletic Commission tried to ban Nick Diaz from competing for life because of his continued positive test for marijuana. For life, people, or at least that's what they said. It was effectively a 5-year ban, but given the age of Nick, most, including the commission, felt like that was the case. And as a result, we had to wait 6 whole years before getting to see one of the most exciting fighters compete in the sport again. Given that in some states there are now no restrictions on marijuana consumption during fight preparation, it's truly sad to look back in hindsight and see how so much surrounding Diaz was mishandled. The UFC literally had a 420 friendly lifelong martial artist and cultural icon in the palm of their hands and did nothing with it. Instead, a sad reality existed where an athlete and competitor the caliber of Nick was forced to the sidelines in what could have been the final prime years of his career. Diaz himself will tell you that since
that's horrible.
his pro debut, people have been doing everything they can to prevent his success in this sport, and you kind of have to.
I know his brother Nate Diaz. That nigga's fine.
And it's
I don't know him as much.
promotional malpractice with interviews, posters, and severe punishments were dealt out left, right, and center, with Diaz often being portrayed as the bad guy, with the focus and promotional attention usually shifting to his opponent. His brother Nate found his big break in the Conor fight and has certainly started earning pay equivalent to his needle-moving ability. Nick, on the other hand, has been denied that chance for years, and now, finally, against all the odds, is making a return to the sport. The question is, do you think that was enough, or do you think Diaz should fight again? A big shout out to Luke Taylor for editing this.
Anyways, fuck Luke Taylor. I mean, hey, thank you, Luke Taylor. But hey, anyways, hey, that is it for the video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It is the end of the video. I already said that. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you did not enjoy it, fuck you. Hit the subscribe button. Join the royal babies, because I am royal. You are royal. And yeah, we're not here to take part. We're here to take over. That is it for the video. Peace.